So good afternoon to our participating communities in Ontario, and good morning to our communities participating in the Northwest Territories. Welcome everyone to day 2 of the Level 1 training session, Business of Community Networks. I'd like to recognize and thank any chief and council members, community champions, and community members that are on the call. I'd like to reiterate that this pilot project would not have gotten off the ground without the commitment from the participating communities and the hard work of the community champions. Miigwech Masi Cho to all. My name is Bruce Visitor, and I'm the project manager for the project. I've been operating my own business for 15 years now and work with Indigenous clientele across Ontario. I'm a certified professional accountant, and I'm a member of Whitefish River First Nation here in Ontario. I will be your host moderator for today's session. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please set your microphone on your device to mute unless you're speaking. This will limit the background noise when presenters are speaking. You can turn your camera on or off, it's up to you. In terms of questions during the presentations, we encourage questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand using the emotion icon at the bottom of your toolbar. If I see it, I'll stop the presenter at an appropriate time and then give you the cue to ask your question. The other option, of course, is to post your question in the chat, and we'll try to get to it as soon as possible, or we'll get to it after the presentation. Any general questions we'll respond to as soon as we can. Agenda for today's session is posted in the chat. Today's session is also being recorded as well. There was some questions yesterday around that, so for those of you that would like a recording, we can make that available at a later date. If you do want a recording, just post a message in the chat so we can follow up with you. On that note, I'd like to introduce Dr. Hossein Badran. Dr. Badran is the Senior Director of Internet Growth and Trust for the Internet Society and is also serving as the project lead for this project. Dr. Badran will now provide you with an overview of the pilot project.
Thank you so much, Bruce. It's really a privilege and honor to be here today with the participants in this training, communities in Ontario and Northwest Territories. It's really a pleasure to be here and have this knowledge sharing and training session. I have a short presentation that I would like to go through. 1 second. So and thank you so much, Bruce, also for the introduction. Much appreciated. In this presentation, I just covered what the Internet Society background on it, and also the short overview of the collaboration between National Search Council of Canada and the Internet Society in this project. The project is the Community Broadband Networks for Rural and Remote Indigenous Communities. And from an Internet Society point of view, we are a global non-for-profit organization that our vision is to promote the deployment for the internet for everyone, and we really promote and advocate for an open, secure, and trustworthy internet that's globally available for everyone. So we try to reach the unconnected part of the population. As you know, maybe 50% of the world population today is still not connected to the internet. And an important part of this, of course, are Indigenous communities, First Nations communities, and tribal communities globally. Of course, each of these targets requires collaboration between different stakeholders, non-for-profits like ourselves, private sector, public sector, government entities, and so on. And to reach this particular mission in Canada, the National Search Council of Canada has reached out to us, to the Internet Society, to collaborate on a project that helps targets to bridge the digital divide in Indigenous communities across Ontario, and we added also Northwest Territories. So the project objective here is to reach out to communities in Ontario and Northwest Territories and promote the or plan for training sessions that cover key concepts of community networks. And community networks are networks that are built and run and operated by community members themselves. This is the goal of the project, to bring readiness in communities, indigenous communities, to deploy community networks hopefully in the near future. And the project itself is in 4 phases. Bringing together an advisory committee from indigenous experts, indigenous leaderships, as well as from academia and experts in the telecommunication internet sector in Canada, to promote and identify the communities that we are going to target with this session, and then offer level 1 training, which we are doing today. And we did yesterday in terms of community networks 101, the fundamentals of community networks, and then also the business community networks, which we're going to discuss today. Level 2 of the training will take place early next year. That goes into more depth into fiber optics deployment, wireless network deployment, and also a hands-on exercise. And finally, we'll accumulate the results of the surveys and the experience of the participants in a case study on one of the communities, as well as documenting in terms of videos and pictures the participation and engagement of communities in this project. The project will last for 1 year, from April 2022 until April 2023. So it's a great honor to have you with us today, and we're also very honored to have on this esteemed members of the advisory committee who volunteer their expertise and their time. 60% of them are indigenous, as you see the names here, and some of them are presenting with us today. Tim Whiteduck, Rob McMahon are part of the advisory committee, and they are presenting and discussing with us today. Bruce Visitor is the project manager, as you have just heard, and we are very thankful to his efforts and leadership. These are the nations that indigenous community partners that have committed to participate, and we thank you so much for being part of this training session. And we look forward to your continued participation in this session, and then in the follow-up sessions that will take place later next year. Thank you so much. Bruce, back to you.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Hossein, for that very informative presentation. So now we're going to move on. I'm going to ask or introduce Samantha Belay. Samantha is a PhD candidate at the University of Alberta and is working on the monitoring and evaluation aspects of the project. She's going to provide a brief overview of the learning objectives related to today's session. Samantha?
Hi, everyone. So today, again, like yesterday, our learning objectives are mainly around course evaluation. So I'll again put them in the chat for your reference, just so you have them there for yourself. But by the end of today, you should have confidence in your understanding of the first steps to setting up a community-based network. You should feel comfortable in reaching out to the contacts or the support network that is being provided in this training. Know the cost of the different types of infrastructure for community-based networks. Be able to identify possible funders for developing a community-based network. Describe the tasks, challenges, and benefits to operating and owning your own community-based network. And finally, you should be able to understand what is required to maintain a community-based network. So they're in the chat there. And that's everything from me. Bruce?
Okay, thank you, Samantha. Thanks for sharing that. I'd now like to introduce Rob McMahon. Rob's an associate professor at the University of Alberta, and he's managing the monitoring and evaluation aspects of the project. So he'll provide an overview of the evaluation component related to the training today. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I think I can see a few familiar faces from yesterday, so I'll sound a bit like a broken record, but it's really important, I think, to make it clear about the research and also make sure that you're comfortable filling out the surveys and knowing where your information is going. And so just as a reminder, so what we're doing is, because this is a pilot project, we're going to be about the impacts of the training. And what does that mean? Well, that means that we're trying to measure people's levels of understanding and confidence related to the topics and the learning objectives that Samantha just explained to us. So how we're doing that is that I'll post a link in the chat that we'll have about 5 minutes or so to complete a survey before we start the training. Then you'll go through the training, and then at the very end of the session, I'll post one at the end. And we're trying to just see how you found the training today, and also any advice or suggestions you have so we can improve it as we continue moving forward with this. And I'll just mention that, you know, all of these surveys, all the research has undergone a review by both the advisory committee that Hussein had introduced, as well as the University of Alberta Ethics. You shouldn't feel like you have to answer all the questions if you're not comfortable answering them, so feel free to skip them. If you do decide to answer them all, we do ask for your last name, the first letter of your first name and your last name. That's just to help us see you know, the differences as people's information or their understanding or confidence may have changed after the session. Nobody else will know your answers. It's all going to be anonymous. And then how will we use the information that we collect today? So we'll be using it to improve the programming moving forward for our team, for the instructors, and so on. Also using some of it because we're doing some research about this, so we may develop some academic work out of this. So I'll just stop there and just ask you if you have any questions for us about any of the research or evaluation. Cool. Okay. Okay, great. So if you could just look to the chat, those of you online, I will just post the link. So if we could take about 5 minutes to complete that. And then for folks in the room, I think you probably have the paper version. So if you finished them already, great. Awesome. Thank you. So you could just, I don't know, look at Facebook for 5 minutes or something. And we'll see everybody soon. Thanks again for completing these.
All right, thanks, Rob. So we'll just take a few minutes to complete the pre-surveys.
I see Jason doing an excellent job on his end, collecting the written surveys beforehand. Appreciate it, Jason.
Okay, everyone. We're going to get started now. So thanks again, Rob, Hossein, Samantha, for providing that information. So I'm going to introduce our first presenter is Tim Whiteduck. Tim is the IT director at the First Nations Education Council, and we are very pleased to have him here with us today. Tim, can you provide some additional background info on yourself and then proceed with your presentation, please?
Sure. So hi everybody. It's an honor to present in your First Nation territories. I'm presenting from the Huron territory based in Quebec City, but I'm not from Quebec City. I'm from Kitigan-Zibi, Maniwaki, Quebec. I'm Algonquin Anishinaabe from that community. So glad to see everybody there today. I'm going to do my best to resume many years of work that we've been doing and that I've been doing to get to where we are today in community broadband. But I just want to share, like everybody knows already, is that ownership, fiber ownership or infrastructure ownership is the key way to go. I remember when early in my early years working for my community, it was extremely difficult to establish community broadband when you're having to deal with a Bell Canada or another company, because everything costs money. If you want a VPN, all that stuff. So the way to go is to own it and to manage it yourself. So my presentation is going to get to that point at the end, but I wanted you to well understand it took a bit of a journey to get where we are, to build that expertise and capacity. So I'll be sharing you some information on to call us for information on how we did it. Certain information that you need to say, hey, Tim, how did you get that price? Well, no problem. Just give us a call or send me an email. So my goal is to also share the resources with you because I believe in sharing, and this is the way we've always been working with Rob and our colleagues across Canada. So I will start my presentation now, and I guess Bruce, the questions will come later, right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
If there's some that come up, I'll interrupt you. Try not to be too rude.
All right. Does everybody see my screen? Perfect. So there you go. That's my title, my name, and my email address right on the front page. Bruce, I'll give you an updated PowerPoint because I forgot my email on that page. So I'll send you this shortly afterwards. So like I said, who are we at the First Nations Education Council? This is the organization where I work. We're a membership of 22 First Nations across southern Quebec. And as you can see there, they range from east to west. And there's 8 different nations that we cover or support in the domain of education. But we got into the domain of technology in 2003 and 4 with the First Nation SchoolNet program, and I'll explain that one a little bit later. But broadband in these areas, especially in the yellow dotted areas, was extremely difficult because the telcos did not want to service these communities at all. So it was just until 3 or 4 years ago that we developed a fiber to the home project for these communities. So they've got broadband now to the homes, but this is recent, like it's really recent. So I appreciate if you have stories about Bell Canada or wherever not going to your community, because it's a challenge here too. But it's getting a lot better now in Quebec. The province of Quebec, by the way, has initiated a connectivity initiative, which aims to connect all homes in Quebec by this year. So this is an initiative that's greatly supported by the First Nations, of course, but it's not enough. It comes a bit too late, but we're not going to definitely say no to this. But with this now being implemented or installed, there's much more to do, right? For cellular connectivity, for the security and all that stuff. So this is where Rob comes into play with the support of the FMCC, which is an organization that I'll explain at the end of the presentation that is established to support the advocacy to CRTC to push these needs that First Nations have to the CRTC level so that they could influence Bell Canada and TELUS and all these companies. So that's my advocacy piece here. I won't go too further, but so today, after all these years of working in technologies, we come down to three main elements of our mission to support technologies. So on the part of advocacy, we did establish a means to do that with the FMCC. So we have an avenue for that. So that's great. We do operate complex networks by serving self-determined development goals, like ownership of fiber optics. So all the fiber optic infrastructure deployments that we do are owned by the communities. And there's easy ways to manage those with the CRTC, and I'll explain that in a minute. And finally, engage in economic, technical, and social activities associated with effective use of digital technologies. So it's one thing to deploy or brainstorm a connectivity solution, but you got to maintain it and operate it. And as you can imagine, doing this business operation with residents, it's a challenge because you have to be well established with a business case. You have to be self-sustaining type of operation, and you need to collect revenue, right? So there's a business end to all of this. I just want to point out on our website, if you were to go to the link there, you'll find a great governance document that we developed 5 years ago. It was our attempt to create standards in education, developing or establishing strong governance guide in education. But in there is also a big technology piece. So you will see standards in connectivity, technical support. I believe we even have a formula for how many technicians do you need for so many computers type of thing. So there's all that detailed information in there that we're still using as a guide. And feel free to use it and refer to it and give us a call on how we got to those standards. And we'd be more than pleased to address your questions. But this is sort of still my guiding document that we did with communities. So all these standards are built with communities. So we had a big consultation process over the 2-year period, and there you go. So it's a great reference tool for us. So I always go back to my early years when I first started in the connectivity here, and I always go to the KNET organization because they were leaders way back when in 2000. If I first met Brian Beaton and his colleagues there. But they developed a model that we're using today, and it's a forever model in Indigenous connectivity. All the public sector broadband is owned by the community. The point of presence is a single point of presence that's an aggregate, so that could be shared to public sector. If there's a residential solution in there, it'll fit in there, no problem. It's just you got to make sure that you don't overlap both of them because they might be using different technology, fiber technology. They could be using different business cases, obviously, and there are different needs of clients, right? So just be careful when you do your both an FTT or a fiber to the home, for example, or a fiber to the public sector, that you differentiate the needs of both because they're two different needs. But this model is actually the governing model that we use today. So it's a good guide for you to follow. And I see a little wireless signal here. Wireless is still used. We still use wireless in the short term, but good fiber is the way for us. So if a building needs fiber, well, we install wireless temporary, and then we get them on fiber by the time we get the permits, right? The work that's involved, the engineering. So this is how we still use wireless today, but wireless is not a long-term solution in no means. It's fiber optic for us. So just some resources here for you. If you are seeking funding support to do your community broadband, this is how we funded ours. The main funding resource for us has been the First Nations Infrastructure Fund. So they've been they've been a steady, stable partner now since I would say a good 12 years in providing us monies, annual fees to support public sector fiber expansion, networking equipment upgrades, building cabling improvements. So these are all infrastructure related items for telecommunications. So they fit under the FINIF criteria, which has been added to that program in 2012, I believe, somewhere around there. So yeah, so these resources here are a good start for you to go. And by the way, I was just assisting the Atlantic region explain this exact funding resource and how we did our project last week. So if you ever need help, no problem, like we can help you explain that and bring in our First Nation Infrastructure Fund representative on the government side to assist in that conversation, to explain how he did it and how he explained it in his government plan, if you say so. For sure, this is the way to look for funding to start your project. For residential broadband, I realize there's one link that you could use to go to the funding resources for residential connectivity. It's been a while since we did financial support for residential connectivity, but it's CRTC and ISED that lead that charge. And there is a fund at CRTC. I believe they're in their 4th year, Rob, I think. That's what I can determine from the site. But the application process is closed currently, so I think they're going to be opening another round. So, but I would ask you to check that link for funding resources and actually initiate the conversation with your FINIF contact, because he would be able to help you out as there as well. And just some notes at the bottom, what is eligible in that program in the residential piece is the fiber optic material and construction for backhaul only. It doesn't include, which doesn't make sense, the distribution networking equipment, like that little hub that you install in the home. That has to be paid by the customer. So little nuances like this, you got to look out for when you're doing a bigger deployment. So I just wanted to show you, basically, this is our model of how we deploy fiber optic. We do standardize on an 80 and 98 strand fiber back transport throughout the community. That gives us the ability to extend buildings as buildings expand in the community. So we base it on that. So basically, we establish a POP or a center in the community, which is normally for us a health center, because it's the health centers that have the newest buildings in town with a generator. So we end up choosing the best, building with the most updated infrastructure and with a generator. Generator is important because power does fluctuate, and you want to make sure that you make your network stable as possible. So this is why you need to choose the POP carefully in that sense. From there, we basically do a star configuration for your fiber optics to each building, and depending on the size of the building or how would you say the level of service. For example, we do 3 drops per site, which is a lot. Usually you just need 2. Well, if one link breaks, you could use the other one. So it's really up to your needs, but as a start, you could do 2 per building or 3 per building, depending on what you could afford. It does come down to cost. We chose 98 strands because we could afford it at the time. So you might, if you have more money, you decrease your need. That's all in the engineering. When you get to that point, you'll be able to cost out properly. So once you get your network installed, you'll need a firewall to protect that network, and finally an internet link to furnish the internet. And as you can see, I would recommend that you start with a reasonable amount of bandwidth so that you grow as your bandwidth needs are increased. So that little pipe and that little water level of bandwidth that you see there was where we started when we deployed fiber. But now we're using 1 gig. Our target is 1 gig now for per community. So this was a standard that we had set in 2012, actually. So today it's 1 gig. So this is our working standard. It's all about standards, because when you have standards, it's easier to build when everybody's on the same page. So where it all began for us, like I said before, in 2002, this is where the FNEC, our organization, became involved in delivering the First Nations SchoolNet program. This is where it all started for us. This is how we learned how to deploy networks, how to deploy video conferencing, technologies that were used at the time to do distance learning and all these things. During that period, though, between 2003 and 6, we collaborated with 6 organizations across Canada, and you see them here on the right. You have the First Nation Help Desk in Atlantic, KNET in Ontario, Northern Ontario. You got Manitoba, KCDC, and then BC First Nations Education Council there. So we did have a national link where we shared best practices, and believe you me, this was very effective for these years and how to do things and how to manage broadband. So we learned a great lot during this period. So I'm always encouraging collaboration, and this is how we really help advance things when more complex things like this need to be addressed. So anyway, these organizations, I believe, still do exist, but the collaboration level is much reduced today than it was before. But with the FMCC organization, of course, Rob's organization that he leads is really restoring that collaboration. So from 2007 and today, we continue to offer technical support, which I showed you right at the beginning, outlining our mission and our vision, our mission to support technologies. Okay, I got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to release quickly. When we started in 2003, like I said, we were learning a lot about connectivity. In 2006, we realized that we had to do more because as we bring broadband to the schools, which was our goal at the time, our mandate, it didn't make sense not to share it. So this is how we determined that we needed something right off the bat more viable to support all community. So we developed a visionary document in 2007, which outlined the mission, the needs, the objective, and the goal was to install fiber optic in each First Nation community. So it really provided the visionary objective of all First Nations within our member, which we had 22 member First Nations, to develop a project and to seek funding to go after it. So basically, those are the steps that we went through. We collaborated with an engineering firm early on to do the theoretic costing, and you could do that by providing community maps. They give you a costing back, and there you got your preliminary numbers, which will be refined down the road once you get you down to the engineering. But this is a really good start, and this is what we did to get started. So if you have any questions on that, do not hesitate. It's really important though to get community buy-in when you do this. So we were required to go to each community to explain this visionary document, to get their buy-in and to explain the benefits of fiber. What is fiber? All these things. So it took that really to sell the project and to get the on board of the communities. For me, it's the good way, the good way to do this project is to promote it in the communities in person. So once we got the okay or initial funding for the visionary project, we only got partial funding. So we had to downsize the project. So so we got to work. These are the steps that we took to get started. So we chose 6 communities based on the priority. We registered us to CRTC as a non-dominant carrier. This is required to get permits. So you need this if you're going to install fiber on the poles. We selected an engineering firm through call for bids. And if you need call for bid documentation, let me know. We could share that as well. We did do a residential piece, and I'm just sharing the name of the company that helped us there. Stantec is I believe, a national company that exists, and they have telecommunication expertise. And like I said, we received 3 bids, and we awarded one company who was much lower than the rest. And so we also established a support contract with them to do repairs quickly and to ensure predictable rates for repairs. So that's basically how we moved forward in the project there. And yes, you can install fiber in the wintertime, as you can see on the right. I just wanted to bring that picture because often, can you install fiber in the winter? Yeah, you can. So here's some costing for you. I just wanted to provide this to share, give you a ballpark idea. Mind you, this is 2019 pricing, so this is pre-COVID. So this is probably a much higher. But these are the 6 communities that I believe, or the 7 here, but there's 6 communities that we started with. And there you see the pricing of the fiber. So as you could see, you can't really base it on a per building cost because it depends on the length between buildings. It depends on the fusioning. So there's a lot of how'd you say things that affect the final price. Kitigan-Zibi is a fairly large community, so it's not only the cost of the length that's in play here, but the number of buildings as well. So there's more fusioning to do and all these things. So that all comes into play. Yeah, for budgeting purposes, this is only for the fiber optic material, right? Or the infrastructure. You still have to buy all of your networking gear, which is equal to, or more than the cost of your fiber optic. As you realize, as you may know, a cost for a switch, a PoE switch, depending on what you're looking at, ranges between 2,000 to 5. If you're buying a Cisco switch, it's really high, but there you have it. It's something to really consider when you deploy your fiber optic. Okay, I'm down to my last 40 seconds. So there's the regional map of what we do, our work in the communities. And as you can see, we have 3 major providers that we deal with: Telebec, Bell, and Sojatel and Satel. I actually have 5. We did this map here to show a picture of what residential connectivity status are. But our main objective here is to support the 1 gig, the links that you see. These are the community public sector connections. So, and these are some of the service offer that we do here to support communities deploy technology. As you can see, my time is up. So anyway, you have this, and you can just call me if you have any question on it. But this gives you a complete picture. And finally, just to share this last point, the First Mile is an organization that we still partner with today, and which has been key in our advocacy to advance connectivity needs for First Nations. And I encourage you to go see it. There's a lot of community stories and experiences that they shared on this website. So thank you for your time.
Hey, Tim, we do have a bit more time here, so maybe if you can go back to that second last slide and explain it a bit more there. It looked kind of complicated what was going on. I think that was one with all the clouds and everything. Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Like I said,
2:25, so.
Pardon?
We do have until 2:25. So.
Oh, okay, I see. Sorry.
Problem.
Yeah, the purpose of this map was to give an explanation to our communities of the global situation of connectivity. This was presented to them, I think, last year, the year before, when Quebec was in the process of deploying upgrades. And we wanted to make sure that communities were aware that this was going on, and to call the province of Quebec to see, hey, where's my community in this picture? Are you taking care of our community? What's your plan? So this is the whole reason for this. And we did add another detailed report to this, where they could actually go to the website and check for themselves on the provincial website what was going on in their area. So we really wanted to get them involved early, so they could take the lead in a sense to see how the province was taking care of their connectivity need for residential services. So that was the whole purpose of this. So as you can see here, for any of the, let's say if I choose Wendake, so the community of Wendake link 1 gig to the internet. So we provide the firewall at the community level. And from there, we manage all of the network needs, because that firewall is managed by us. We do manage all the firewalls in the communities. So again, when we apply to FNIF, we apply always economies of scale, which is another approach that we try to leverage. So we have 22 communities. When it's time to renew firewall subscriptions, we do it in one shot. We get the best price by maximizing our economies of scale, and then we do the work to upgrade them. So that's one example of economies of scale. Networking equipment, again, same thing. We do have a cycle of equipment replacement in our communities. So 1 year it's this group of communities, et cetera, et cetera. So we know what we're needing, and we do a quote request or a call for bids for equipment. So we've been able to save up to 40% in the process of doing this exercise, call for bids on equipment. So it's really worth your while to take the time to do call for bids in a larger amount, if and ever possible, because it does save a lot down the road. Okay, there's nothing more I could elaborate on. Bruce, is there anything else?
I have a question, Tim.
Sure.
Just on that slide there that you were showing, there's a lot of information there, and obviously somebody must have put that information together and got the information from somewhere. I think that's one of the issues that I know some of the communities I deal with, some of the First Nation communities in Ontario, is just not knowing where to get that information, where to start, who to call. Like, I think for myself, I'm a pretty smart guy and I work with a lot of communities, but my background's financial. I would have no idea, for instance, I'm educated where to start to get this information, who to call, so a lot of the communities are lost. I don't even know where to tell my clients how to get this info, when they want to do upgrades or want to, even get cell service in their community, for instance.
Right. I think what would help a lot is when you start your project, you're going to need a telecommunications engineer. And I think that's your key resource that's going to help you get information, like you're saying, Bruce. Where do I call in Ontario to find out what the province is doing to support connectivity? This person would definitely know. He would know also other programs to go to or to go after. So getting a telecommunication engineer to start doing your analysis, maybe even checking out resourcing for funding, that would be an excellent start. This is how we started, actually. So when before we hired Jesma Telecom, actually, we did hire a fiber consultant, not even an engineer, a fiber consultant who knew how to go about doing these projects. He put us on the right path, which actually led to an engineer who did the infrastructure planning. But this fiber consultant knew where to go. He knew how to find information for us. So I think that would be a good start for you as well. A cheaper start, I guess, would be the right word.
Okay. One of the participants had a question kind of along that lines, I think, was where to purchase fiber in Ontario other than Bell. I know you're from Quebec, but I'm sure you guys must have to purchase fiber as well.
Yeah, I know that, our engineer we had before did purchase it directly from Corning. I don't know how he did it, but he was able to do it through directly with the supplier. So it all depends on how much fiber you need. I could ask our fiber provider to see if they have a supplier that I could share where communities can buy directly from. But we buy our fiber directly through the fiber contractor who's doing the deployment as well. So when we get the price from the fiber contractor, he supplies the material as well. So yeah. But, I'll share the Corning information that I have. I recall seeing that, so I'll send it to you, Bruce.
Okay. That's good. Anybody else, if you have any questions, post. I know we have a few more minutes here, so I got a couple more questions I'm going to ask I think just on the First Nation Infrastructure Fund, obviously that's a Canadian-wide fund, I believe. So what's been your success from your organization's perspective in terms of submitting successful proposals? Because I'm sure, there's limited funds, and then obviously there's probably more proposals than funds. So kind of what sets your proposals apart from everybody else's, and what kind of tips could you provide maybe some of the communities here that are looking at maybe submitting a proposal down the road?
Right. Okay, sure. What's been our success, I guess, has been we created the visionary document. We did meet with regional office representatives at Indian Affairs at the time to explain the objective of the project. And obviously, they don't have the money at the point, right at that point. So they sort of need a heads up a year in advance. Okay, so expect, there's some delay in that. But once you do get started, and you provide them with because they have engineers on staff too that's checking this stuff, right? So when they see an engineering plan from us, they're saying, whoa, okay, this is engineered certified. So they can't deny the quality of the work. So we're doing it the good way, the proper way of engineering way. So you pass the criteria of quality. Now you get into the practice of deployment and your ability to deploy. So you start small. And you highlight collaborators in your project, and feel free to use us or other successful, telecom, whatever, and start that way. The fund in Quebec is a Quebec fund. So I believe every region gets their fund, FINIF fund, if you will. And we always told them, this was the message from us, because we know that this fund is used for housing, it's used for anything, any community, which is priority, right? We never wanted to impact on what's going on and what communities needed, but fiber optic is needed now in communities, and it's an important piece to what they're needing to maintain their sectors. So now today, I submit a 3-year proposal every year to my contact at FINIF, and he sees what we need for upgrades, connectivity, and he even tells me, can you make sure you connect those buildings? And I say, okay, I didn't know. Sometimes I get more information from him than I do from the communities, because he knows what's going on way before, right? So we're at that point now. He's relying on us to do that community broadband or public sector broadband to the community. So we're at that point where we're the provider we're recognized now. So we're sailing. But it took a bit to get there. But once you prove that you're able to deploy and all that, you're good to go. So I would start small and hire an engineer to assist you into quality side, and partner with someone who's experienced, just to provide that expertise along the way.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I think that's a great point. Just in my experience working with First Nation communities on the capital side, if you have a capital plan in place and you have some supporting documentation to go along with your proposal, yes, I think you're more successful in having that engineering plan in place. I think Hossein had a question.
Yes, thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Tim, for the excellent presentation. The expertise that you share is very, very valuable, in my opinion. I wanted to ask about a couple of small things. One, when you mentioned that you, in many of the deployments, use generator as a backup for power supply, what is your experience with using solar cells for power generation? And the second question I had is on the cost of backhaul. Perhaps the province can support as part one of the initiatives, but in general, where would the cost of the backhaul be coming from? Can be some external funding, government funding to this, or what is your recommendation? Thank you.
Okay. We haven't tried solar, to be honest, Hossein, as a source, an alternative source to power. We do have a few communities still running on generator. Maybe they have something in play, I'm not sure, but we're not really in that. We leave it to the community to generate that type of innovation. I know it's being discussed here and there, so I'm not aware though of any community that's doing something at this point. But there could be, but I'd have to get back to you. Sorry, I can't be accurate on that one. In regards to your backhaul, for one of the projects we did, the isolated projects, FINIF did pay for a portion of the backhaul, just to let you know. They did support it, even though it was the responsibility of Industry Canada to pay the majority of it, or the Connecting Canadians program. But FINIF did pay a part of it. So anything's possible, and this is why when you get your engineering plans done, look at setting a meeting with these representatives at FINIF to have a finance discussion on how what stakeholders you need to get to look at. Because if you refer them to Quebec, feel free to refer them to Quebec. I'd be more than happy to share what we're doing with Atlantic, right? Because like I said, we already did with Atlantic.
Thanks, Tim. Just to clarify, some of the participants, even myself, don't know what backhaul means. When you can just do a quick definition or explanation on what backhaul is.
Backhaul is actually the link from the supplier network. So, for example, if you're in a community and Bell Canada is the provider around you, or further away from you, in most cases where communities are further away from urban centers, well, the backhaul would be the link feeding the community with internet. So you're backhauling internet to the community. So if I show you my picture here, that would be the line here, the line serving the community in a sense. So all these lines are backhaul to the community. They're feeding the community. That's all that means.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. Okay, so Jason just had to clarify his question, looking at 1 gigabyte of internet backhaul in Ontario. So I think you said you were going to get back to us on that, Tim. You're going to look into that.
What was the question, Bruce?
They were looking at where they could purchase 1 gigabyte of backhaul in Ontario.
Okay. Sure, I could ask Bell, but where in Ontario?
Other than Bell.
Okay, well, that's a tricky one. I would need to exactly know where they are.
Okay.
But it's yeah, I know Northern Ontario. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Armstrong, Ontario.
Yeah,
Thunder Bay, north of Thunder Bay.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty tough up there. You only have one provider, and right now I think it's Bell. And they even got monies recently, right? About 5 years ago to upgrade the network there. So I don't know who else could be a provider there, but I'm just gonna say this, but does Hydro-Quebec, or not Hydro-Quebec, Hydro-Ontario or Hydro One, whatever it's called in the Northern Ontario, do they have service lines up and down the territory? I'm pretty sure they do, eh?
I would think they do, yeah.
Yeah. Is there fiber optic on that corridor? I'm pretty sure there is. I don't want to feed something to start, but in Quebec, Hydro-Quebec have fiber optic on all their corridors because they manage their dams, right? That's how they manage their facilities. And the Cree Nation got access to those fibers, or part of some of those fibers, which has been key for them for backhaul, for transport to their large area or their large territory. So yeah. I don't know why maybe communities can ask.
Okay. I just turned off my mic. CN has fiber running on it, but we are not allowed to access it. Yep. We asked Bell for 1 gig of internet from them. They took down, said they didn't have any available for us, so we were trying to find another place to buy 1 gig of internet so we can start ours. So we just need to know. We're in Northern Ontario, Northwestern Ontario, just north of Thunder Bay, Ontario. Along the CN line. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to look into that a little further, Jason. I know we got another presenter coming up here, and Tim can provide some feedback as well via email.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Tim, for the presentation.
Okay.
Very informative for sure. We're going to move on to our second presenter here. I'd like to introduce our second presenter of the day and final presenter of the day, Brian Nakaji. Brian is an account executive for the Western James Bay Telecom Network, and we're happy to have Brian join us here today. Brian, can you provide some additional info on yourself and then proceed with your presentation, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I have a BA in public administration and governance, and also currently studying my master's at Queen's for the same public administration, and mostly on in the area of public policy, and I will mention more of as I present the slide or my presentation in the slide in terms of who I am, I guess. And I'll just share my content now. Screen. Okay. Start. All right. Screen broadcast. Somehow, for some reason, it's kind of slow today. Optimize. Let me try that again. The application. Screen. Start broadcast. I'm having trouble here.
And am I able to share the screen and then you can look at the screen and then just let me know if you want me to move the next slide over? If I pull up your presentation, will that work?
I'll try one more time.
Okay, try one more time. If not, I'll pull it up.
Okay. All right. Good. Can you pull it up on your end there,
Okay. Yeah,
Bruce?
I'll try. Okay, here it is. So people should be seeing Brian's first slide here.
Yes, I can see it.
Can you see it, Brian?
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So you want to move to the next slide.
Let's just move to the next slide now, then.
Okay.
I currently reside in Moose Factory with my family. I am a member of Attawabscut First Nation, and I work for Western James Bay as an account exec for over 6 years. I was instrumental in developing a business case for the multi-million-dollar fiber to the home expansion project. With my involvement, I am the co-manager for the network as it's being built or rolled out. The project will provide high-speed telecommunication services, including a full-fledged internet, voice over through IP and TV interface, and the cellular service network within the James Bay region. As well, I guess, in terms of I became involved in the area when the position was posted for a finance officer. I was new to technology. I applied for the position, and then I been here since then. So next slide, please. I won't go too much in terms of this slide here. This is just the background connectivity gap that we've encountered in attempting to access reliable, accessible, and affordable high-speed internet service through those announcements and the platforms and community-based network projects through our strategic initiatives, particularly the fiber to the home expansion project for the 3 communities, namely Attawapiskat, Saskatchewan, and Fort Albany First Nations. Next, please. By the end, next slide. By the end of this presentation, you should be able to describe the tasks, benefits, risks, and challenges of owning and operating a CBN. We will examine why a community should undertake and build a community-based network, infrastructure operations and maintenance. We will examine why a community should take on the community-based network, realizing its benefits. What are some of the risks, challenges of a community taking on the initiative? What are the staffing needs and the required training capacity needs? Next slide, please. Why should a community explore the idea of owning and operating its own community-based network? The C3 benefits of a community-based network broadband are: 1, cost-efficient fiber optic network. The primary incentive in owning and operating a community-based network is ensuring an equitable and reliable transport infrastructure, maintenance, and operations. Indeed, a community effectively manages and monitors the maintenance or repairs to its network infrastructure and internet services. 2, connectivity performance. With improved broadband connectivity spectrum, the performance provides a robust, reliable, high-speed internet and data services to its customers. Consequently, accessibility to ICTs from a place of digital isolation serves to offer opportunities of a quality of life far better than there were none. Affordable costs to the end user, complete with a pricing structure, enables an enhanced strategy to e-service platforms through data, voice, and TV interface previously inaccessible. Next slide, please. Oh, there was another slide before that. Can you? There you go. Yeah. Briefly, to ensure a smooth, cost-efficient fiber optic network business operations with a robust, reliable, and affordable community-based network, the information and community technologies M3s are: 1, monitor. There exists a monitoring. I think there's a slide before, after that. Bruce? There you go.
Okay.
The monitor. There exists a monitoring software such as SABIX or otherwise with notification features to verify the availability and responsiveness of the ICT network. This monitoring software is a real-time alerting software in the event of network failure. The software graph the network bandwidth usage, and the report is analyzed each month by technical staff, internal and external. Once checked, The report is sent every month to community-based network management team for review. For example, Western James Bay has local technicians available in each community to provide installation and troubleshooting services if need be. In addition, Western James Bay has partnered with an external company to provide remote monitoring services as well as management for the network with 24-hour customer support. Western James Bay currently has 55 anchor institutions that have already existed and have received services. No new fiber segments or constructions is required for the anchor institutions. However, 957 new fiber to the home residential subscriber uptake has been implemented, and management by in-house call and with the aid of the software billing service system. 3, monetize the community-based network infrastructure. It's expected to last over 20 years with regular maintenance that includes consumables and upkeep, including the appropriations to replacement reserve funds. The next slide, please. Anticipating and mitigating risk challenges in infrastructure maintenance and operations of a community-based continuum. The following are payback period. The ICT infrastructure, once completed, is the investment in equity, excluding grants or loans. The conventional payback period, say a minimum of 10-year capital recovery, less of any make-ready anomalies by a third-party at a point of presence, such as the hydropole realignments for an aerial fiber to the home deployment, etc. Financing, equity and debt financing for fiber to the home community-based uptake. The major challenge was securing the financing of the network from all levels of government, chartered banks, trust financiers, economic development initiatives, as well as HST considerations for working capital, etc. Also influencing community and other stakeholder buy-in, for example. Community-based network operations, such as the cost of goods to deliver your network and co-location network capacity, staffing and other general expenditure and risk insurance costs, nearly $5 million to build it was complicated by COVID-19 challenges that delayed the fiber to the home expansion project. Also included in that is the depreciation, investment, and maintenance costs. The reserve funds, the replacement costs in terms of also including contingency planning, risk management, and mitigating. Fiber replacement costs for an aerial break and fix, for example. Also included in there would be your 24-hour emergency response plan. Next slide. This graph is a correlation with all costs associated with community-based network deployment and infrastructure implementation period in years, which is this one here. T equals years, and then vertical is the dollar amount. For example, in both extreme ends of the community-based network spectrum are shown in red is the payback period. ICT infrastructure of equity investment, once completed, is estimated to be a 10-year declining period, including recovering the capital investment costs. Penciled in green are the buildup of the reserve funds and contingency planning, inclusive of the risk management and mitigation for the fiber replacement costs, for example. Along the spectrum are financing, equity and debt financing for the fiber to the home expansion project recovery period, community-based network with the operations, co-location and network capacity, staffing and other general expenditures. Nearly $5 million to build the complicated plans is involved in that cost of depreciation and inventory, which is also including the maintenance costs of the whole project. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Certification and training initiatives for a community-based network. Move back a slide. Move back a slide. Thank you. The company, forward. Slide 9, please. Yeah, yes. The company I work for, the Western James Bay, encourages all its staffing to become certified and trained in ICT, including fiber optic splicing, etc. The kinds of training for community-based network is fiber optic certification and IT, etc. All Ontario colleges offer information technician certification and diploma programs, as well as computer science programming. I encourage anyone to look into their local capacity needs to access online training and education platforms. It could be on a part-time basis if you're working full-time. With me as well, I go to school at Queen's and I take a part-time study, and I do a lot of my home study at home in terms of completing my assignments. Next slide, please. Next slide. The commercial and residential broad. Slide 10, please.
Okay.
Somebody is trigger happy. The commercial and residential broadband service for a community-based network infrastructure building capacity needs are paramount. What types of positions or staffing is involved in community-based network? Like a list of potential staff positions. At Western James Bay, are the operations and technical manager, finance personnel for claims submissions to funding agencies and billing services, on-site technicians and IT personnel, etc. That's for our fiber to the home expansion project. There are other positions that could be available, such as computer science engineer, data processor for accounting and project management, etc. And what else do you see for ICT positions and capacity training needs in your community is probably what I would ask for you to engage in now. And next slide. In summary, hopefully I have pressed upon your minds about the why a community should undertake a community-based network, realize its benefits, what are some of the risks, challenges of a community taking on a community-based network. And finally, what are the staffing needs and the required training capacity needs for your own ICT community-based network. And I will entertain any questions and attempt to answer them for you. Thank you. The next one is just the how I can be contacted.
Or thanks, Brian. Sorry, I was muted. You said you had 3 communities that are part of the James Bay Telecom network. So how many customers do you have currently?
As the rollout plan began earnestly in June, we have about 500 enrolled in all 3 communities, and it's a little bit of slow, and because of its I guess some skepticism, because you have Starlink in the area, ExploreNet, and as well as in Atawapskat, for instance, they have their service by KNet, so they do have their some fiber there as well. That's also with their cellular service that is serviced by an 807 area code. So there's a little bit of some service up there, but we have, however, seen some uptick from Atawapskat in terms of subscribership. So it's it is coming right along as planned, and we're very excited about it.
I guess I have another question. Like you said, there's some communities that, especially some in the north, of Starlink. They get free Starlink dishes to a lot of the northern communities through various projects. So you might have, say, a community with 100 residents, and there might be 50 free Starlink dishes out there. So what kind of separates you then from Starlink, and how can you then attract those Starlink customers over to what you guys have to offer?
I guess what separates us in terms of providing high-speed internet services, what they call the throughput. In terms of bandwidth, say for instance, with Western Danes Bay, with the ping in milliseconds is between 10 and 15, and compared to Starlink, which is very popular at the moment, the ping in milliseconds is between 30 and 50. That's going to, say, from where I am in Moose Factory to Toronto. I can receive that turnaround data within a 10 to 15 millisecond with our service network. But with Starlink, it's probably about 2.5 times that in length.
Okay.
You follow?
So what you're saying is you're faster. You're you're an offer a faster speed.
Yeah, turnaround time in real time.
Okay.
But the only benefit in terms of Starlink is is being used in communities that with the hunting group, the moose hunters in their traditional and trapping grounds. They use that there, so that's really what Starlink has brought the service for that, as opposed to our service. There's that downside, but there's also an upside to our service as well.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
with
a good
that, and say for instance, ExploreNet, there I have here in terms of milliseconds between 600 and 700 milliseconds of turnaround in real time. They're still like you've already I don't know you process your data in terms with our network as compared to ExploreNet. That's what differentiates us from the other service providers.
Okay, thank you. I think Rob had a question. Go
The
ahead, Rob.
Yeah, hi Brian, thanks for your presentation. I had two questions for you actually. One is with Western James Bay providing fiber to the home service. I was just curious, like, did you start with the fiber to the home or did you have wireless services in the communities first? So could you tell us a bit about the technology or the type of services you offered? And then my second question was, you mentioned KNet, and I was curious to what degree your team works with the regional network like KNet on some of this work and how they may or may not support your work there.
All right, I'll answer your first one first. I mean, first question. Initially, the anchor institutions were serviced by fiber network, where we leased the dark fiber from Five Nations Energy, and who have their power grid from connected from Moosonee. And then they were connected, hardwired with the fiber. And our residential customers were serviced by a third-party entity through the point to a multi-point radio frequency technology. That's how we service those clients through a third-party network. But now we're eventually phasing that out, where we're starting to subsume their subscriber uptake into our network. But there, as I said initially, that there's some of the skepticism, I guess, with that one. And with your second question, KNet is serviced in Attawapiskat for the cellular network and cable system. And here in Moose Factory, through Cree Cable, KNet is also somewhere in the back hall of that network in terms of providing broadband.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I think there's no more questions in the chat. I think we're gonna have to wrap things up here for today. We're looking at 2:56, and we still have to do the survey. So Rob, let me just let everybody know, or I think you're gonna post today.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I just posted the link in the chat there. So thanks, everyone. And just visit that when you have time. Next 5 minutes or so.
Okay, great. So the link's posted. Everybody on the call, if you can do this survey, the post survey for day 2. Jason and your gang, I'm assuming you have the hard copy of the surveys that you can complete, and then just scan and email them to Rob. If you have any questions, just send me an email. So while everybody's doing the survey, maybe I'll ask Hossein to provide a few closing comments. I just want to thank everybody as well for participating today. Thank the presenters as well. Great job, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. I'd like to add my gratitude also to the presenters for really sharing their expertise, lifelong expertise with us here, and thank you to the participants for actively listening and exchanging questions in the chat or posing them directly. One point I wanted to highlight is that something that really Tim mentioned several times is that one of the objectives of this gathering is to build a community that can assist each other. We have members who have significant experience in building networks and going through the financing side or the technology and capacity building side, who can really lend a hand to other members, newer members of who are interested in building community networks. So this community sense is really strengthened by us getting together, and we hope that this can continue after the training exercise. Really, it's a key objective of this endeavor. And thank you so much for being here with us. We can't hear you, Bruce.
There we go. Okay, everybody, that concludes our session for today. So as soon as you're done the survey, you can leave the meeting, and thank you very much.